Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dad Designer podcast. I'm here today with Jason from, oh man, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name and your website. Anyway, I'm going to let
That's
Jason
okay.
introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jason Frostholm, and my wife and I run Ildis, a branding and design firm here in Mobile, Alabama.
Awesome. Right as I hit record, I was like, I forgot to ask him these things. So I'm just going to let him do it. um, yeah, and Jason and I got connected through some mutual people and on threads. But talking beforehand, Jason's a dad to two sons. Um, and as he mentioned, he runs a design firm with his wife. But tell us a little bit about your family, um, and and yeah, the details there.
Yeah, so my wife and I have been married. Excuse me, right off the bat, I'm getting flummy. Fun. It makes for great podcasting. Um, so my wife and I have been married for it'll be 19 years in January, and we have twin 15-year-old boys. Um, who we homeschool because of some challenges that they have. They're both on the autism spectrum and both have ADHD. And the public school system here in Alabama is everything that you think the public school system in Alabama would be. It's not great, and it doesn't work for my kids who would now be classified as what's called level one autism, which used to be called Asperger's.
Okay.
And so we made the decision when they were in about first grade, after some incidents that happened at the school, to pull them out and homeschool them. And we've been doing that ever since. And they're now sophomores in high school. And, um, it's challenging running your own business. And on top of that, I teach on the university level at the University of South Alabama, and my wife, we is a pretty close to full time contractor for a fairly large company based out of North Carolina, um, that I can't say because of NDAs. Um, but so balancing all of that is a challenge, but we somehow make it work, and got fairly. At least I hope. I guess I'll find out in 20 years when they send me a therapy bill. Well-adjusted kids.
Yeah. Yeah, the number of times NDAs has come up already in conversations is wild. The work that
Yeah,
we do that we
it's
can't talk about.
yeah. I wish I could, because there's some really cool stuff, but it's getting that paycheck is much more important than
For sure,
disclosing who we work for.
for sure, for
I
sure.
mean, I have clients I can talk about, and I'm happy to talk about them. But
Totally.
this one that really pays our bills, I can't.
Yeah, yeah. And you put the boys in homeschool, or you pulled them into homeschool
Mhm.
back after first grade. Did
Mhm.
you all have full time jobs then? What was your work situation
I
then?
had a full-time job at that point,
Okay,
and my wife was just freelancing on the side.
got it.
I was a creative director for a large engineering firm here locally, um, and it was actually the largest private engineering firm here in the state of Alabama. And when I say engineering, being designers, everybody thinks tech engineering, and no, this is like construction engineering.
Right.
Um, so was not doing the sexy graphics of all that stuff, but was still getting to do some pretty cool stuff. And um, so at that point was I was doing all that, and then in 2019, um, the job had just kind of morphed and changed, and I had reached a plateau of what I could do. There were some management changes, um, and it just wasn't the right fit anymore. So my wife and I had a discussion, because I was freelancing more on the side at the time as well, and she was picking up more freelance stuff, and made the decision form Ildis at that point and take it from being freelance to being a full-fledged actual company of two, and focus on branding and marketing, design,
Nice.
and go from there with our companies. And October 2019 was probably not the best of timing, because 6 months later we're on lockdown, and it was scary because we didn't have any work coming in for, I mean, we had very small jobs, because we did some work for hospitals that were here locally, but we're talking like $500 to $1,000 jobs that were
Mm-hmm.
coming in. Certainly not enough work that would pay the bills. So, I mean, emptied out our 401k and our savings and all that stuff until about July of 2020, when picked up a couple of 5-figure jobs that really kind of propelled us forward, and then have been working steady ever since then, and really been able to make a go of it and make it work where we're not freaking out over when's the next job going to come in and
Yeah.
how are we going to pay our bills or anything like that. We're comfortable. I mean, we're not
Yeah.
rich by any means, but we're
Yeah. Yeah. And how did that shift to coming full time freelance impact homeschooling and your relationship with your kids?
the impact of homeschooling was, it took the pressure off just my wife doing it and split it between both of us. I mean, she still primarily handles it, but I'm able to do more with it, and help out more, and jump in. And since I teach graphic design and stuff like that, I teach them art stuff, and I'm able to supervise more and things like that. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry, I got off on that.
Oh yeah. Also, like your relationship with them, home
Oh,
more, their home.
it was good. It was, I mean, we always had a good relationship. It was just, I don't know if it made it better for them, but it certainly made it better for me. I was able to see them more. I was able to spend more time with them. Um, this was 5 years ago, so they were 10. Um, so it just, being able to see them go through those much more formative years, and be their hands on for the entirety of the day,
Mm-hmm.
was really fun.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see. They're very inquisitive kids. Because of the autism, they lack some filters. So they're very blunt a lot of the times, which can be both frustrating and endlessly entertaining. So it was, finding the balance of, parenting where you don't laugh at them, not at them, but laugh when they ask a question that maybe someone who's, got some miles on them knows not to ask. I mean, kids are blunt to begin with and don't necessarily know, but you add special needs on top of that, and that filter is even more so gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get to witness even more open and honest questions. But it also came with challenges, because when you could see them struggling with things, getting them to be able to talk about feelings and understand emotionally what's going on, there's a bit of a disconnect there. They're not sure how to process it, and how to communicate that. So there's challenges that go on with that, and we still struggle with that. And I kind of understand that firsthand. I've got ADHD, and communicating about my feelings and things like that is a challenge for me. Um, but it's even more so for them. So I from a non-neurotypical side of view, I can relate to what they're going through a little bit, but not to the level. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, we've been able to see and adapt as things have gone along, and really take it from there.
Nice. Nice. As they've matured, have you brought them into your design process at all? I'd imagine they would be some pretty honest critics?
No, not really. I mean, I've shown them my work and stuff like that, and like, so I just finished grad school in May, um, and I took them to my thesis show, and they really liked the stuff, and they were honest about it, and and they saw, the 3 years of grad school, they saw all the work that went through there,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, they're very supportive. Sometimes I think they're a little overly supportive and honest. Like they don't want to ever hurt anybody's feelings. So
Yeah,
they will tell you, "That's great, Daddy," whether they think it or not.
sure.
I'm not sure if they think it's great. They I think they do. I hope they do. um but I haven't really involved them in like the process of that. What I have started doing, and this is really within the past month, is so last year I was finishing up grad school and I was teaching full time at a local college here called Spring Hill College. Unfortunately, there was low enrollment, and the college was struggling to begin with. So my position, the contract wasn't renewed because there wasn't enough enrollment for 2 graphic design professors. So I'm now teaching adjunct at the University of South Alabama. So that frees me up a lot. So what I decided to do is, since I have extra time and we're homeschooling them, is look at teaching them graphic design, because they're very interested in knowing what we do. They're not so much interested in the process of what we do. So I'm trying to get them interested in that process. So I recently bought. Do you know who the designer Chip Kidd is?
Oh
The
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
So he has a book. I think it's called Kid on Design or something like that.
Yeah, it's. I actually have it right
Yeah, I
here.
just bought it. Yes, that's the
This one.
one. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. So I've just bought that. We're gonna start going through that and learning some of the fundamentals of graphic design, and they're excited about that. There's a conference that we haven't actually been able to go to for the past few years because of COVID, and then my son got sick 2 years ago with Hodgkin's lymphoma.
mm-hmm.
So he was going through chemo, and we had to, postpone things because of that. But there's a conference in Columbus, Georgia called Creative South that
Oh yeah, yep.
we used to go to forever, and I did the podcast for them for 3 years, and they're very excited. They want to go to the conference this year, so I figured
That's
this is a
cool.
good primer to get them ready for tagging along to see that.
What's the name of the guy that started that? I'm
Mike
blanking on
Jones.
his name. Mike Jones. Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw him speak once at. Oh, I can't remember the name of the conference. It was in Cleveland, Ohio.
Weapons of Mass Creation.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, really, really nice guy.
Yep. He's great.
That's really cool. So you're going to start kind of going through Chip Kidd's
Yep.
book with the boys.
Yep.
Nice.
Teaching them the fundamentals. When I was doing my assistantship in grad school, I taught a two-dimensional design class as a TA. So I'm going to start with that, teach them the basics of two-dimensional design, and then work into the, graphic design fundamentals. And those two kind of overlap a lot too. So
Mm-hmm. Nice.
I'm looking forward to that.
Nice.
So
Yeah, for folks that don't know, Chip Kidd is most well known for his book cover design.
mm-hmm.
Jurassic Park, the classic silhouette of the T-Rex skeleton head was his doing, and
Mm-hmm.
David Sedaris has a couple books that Chip Kidd has done. And he's done a
Yeah,
ton, but
yeah. He's done thousands of book covers.
yeah,
I've known of him for years, but for some reason, like, I've been on a rabbit hole for him for the past,
yeah,
I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and just bought like his book 1 and book 2. And then there was a monograph that got put out, and I stumbled on it on Amazon, a used copy of it for like $2 with like $3 shipping, that was in like new condition. So I was like,
wow,
well, yeah.
yeah,
So
that's cool.
I've just been kind of on a rabbit hole of him for the past couple months.
Nice, nice. Um, you mentioned doing grad school
Hmm.
and your thesis project. What was the thesis project, and yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my thesis project was on design entrepreneurship education.
Hmm.
You know, going through undergrad and grad school, we talked all about we would talk about like the end goal is to get an agency job or to start freelancing or stuff like that. But we never talked about like the business side of that. Like how do you price for customers and how do you work a contract? How do you um write a creative brief? How do any of that stuff? And I think that's an important part of learning how to be a designer. Whether you go to work for yourself or in an agency or in an in-house situation, your clients are in the business world and you've got to
Hmm.
be able to speak their language. So that's what I wanted to focus on, is how we make that transition um, from teaching design strictly to incorporating teaching design that in a way that we can communicate with people in the business world.
Hmm.
Because that's, when you go to work in the real world, that's what you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
People don't care about, my bosses at the engineering firm didn't care whether I was doing something in CMYK or Pantone. They didn't care about, what paper stock I was using, or, whether or not I could do something um, um, on the web one way or another. They just wanted to see it done. And
Yeah.
I've got to be able to find a way to bridge that gap. And students need to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. And what was the primary output there? Was it a paper or was it a combination of things?
So, at least for my school, we had to do a 30-page paper and then a show that was a collection of work.
Got it.
The paper, I'm not going to bore you with the details. It was just going over that. The show, what I opted to do was to build all of the artwork as assignments.
Oh, cool.
So each assignment would focus on a different aspect. Like I had one for licensing, one for pricing theory, one for creative briefs. I'm blanking on what the other ones were, but I had like 6 or 7 different concepts that I would teach students about and use projects. So I would essentially create an assignment, work the assignment myself, and show what the output of that would be for that, and then
Nice.
give a brief artist statement on that in the show.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then I would assume it was a mixture of document looking things and some artwork.
No, I didn't put document things in. I
Okay.
took just a brief synopsis of what the assignment was, like a 2 sentence synopsis of the assignment, and then I would do a paragraph explaining what the objective and output would be, and then create the assignment itself at, most of them were at like 18 by 24 size.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. And what made you decide to go the grad school route?
Um, Really the pandemic, and had the opportunity. I had wanted to do grad school straight out of undergrad, and just didn't have the financial means to do it 25 years ago.
Hmm.
And then by the time I financially was able to do it, um, and had the time to do it, the school that I did my undergrad studies at had a graduate school, um, or had a grad program for it. So I didn't have to relocate or anything like that. So it made it really easy. And that's the
Nice.
school that I'm teaching at now, University of South Alabama.
Nice.
Um, so it just kind of made it easy. And then um, I applied for an assistantship and got it. So it was paid for. I
Nice.
just had to pay for, fees and stuff like that. So it
Very cool.
really became a no-brainer at that point. It was something that I had wanted to do for a long time.
Yeah.
And it financially was feasible and helped me get to my end goal of wanting to teach.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. What do you when you think of some of the work you've done over your career, are there highlights or specific projects that stand out to you as just you're really proud of that you can talk about?
That I can talk about.
Yeah,
So this isn't like part of my career, but this is one that I did for grad school.
yeah.
I actually won 2 awards for it. Was a rum branding, and I used some. I'm blanking on what the term is. Basically, Creative Commons illustrations that were of tropical foliage and stuff like that, and created the branding for a Jamaican that was brewed in the New England style. My wife and I are really big into like vintage tiki stuff,
Hmm.
and by proxy for that, rum. For that, even though we don't really drink all that much, I if you looked at my liquor cabinet, you would think we had a problem. Um, it's kind of ridiculous, even though like it's like 1 drink a week, and
Yeah,
I'm in my late 40s, so that like does me in. um, and So created this work that incorporated all those vintage illustrations of these tropical birds and tropical foliage and stuff like that, and did the branding and mocked it up in gold foil. I wish I could have afforded to like get it produced. And I mean, I did produce an actual bottle with an actual label, but I couldn't afford to get the actual foil stamp on there
yeah,
because for a one-off that would have been like $2,000. And that's, I spent enough on getting my grad school portfolio together. That would have been, I think my wife would have left me for that. um she certainly wouldn't have been happy.
uh-huh.
But I'm really proud of how that turned out. I think it's some of the better work that I've done, and it wasn't like anything groundbreaking or earth-shattering by any means, but it just it fit the bill for the project and fit the bill for the brief that I came up with
Nice.
in my head.
Yeah.
Really well. And then there's, I worked for a mobile advertising company, which essentially built trucks that they were box trucks that had rotating billboards on them.
Hmm.
And some of the ad campaigns that I came up with at the time, this was back, 2006 ish. Um, I'm really proud of those. And they've really stood like the company's not around anymore, but like I still include them in my portfolio because they're really like design wise stand the test of time. They're still not dated. And then when my last year at the engineering firm, I'm really proud of the advertising campaign that we came up with for that. And we did kind of like a soft rebrand where we we didn't change the logo, but we completely changed the direction of how we marketed the company. Instead of this approach that just about every engineering firm in the construction space takes, where they talk about their technical acumen and their construction skills and how many, you know, hours of experience they have and blah, blah, blah. We focused on the people behind it and the people who worked at the company, um, and how valuable they were. And it worked really well.
Hmm.
It was really successful and it really resonated with our audience. Um, and I had to fight tooth and nail to get that campaign to go through. And the president of the company really for the longest time didn't want it to go through because he saw what everybody else was doing. And he's like, we should be doing this. And I was like, this is exactly why we shouldn't be doing this. It's because everybody else is. Let's do something where we stand out. If it flops and it doesn't work, then yeah, we can go back and do it. But if it does work, you're going to be so far ahead of everybody else that, they're going to be trying to play catch up with you. And ultimately that's what it did, is we came out leaps and bounds above our competitors and ended up winning a lot of jobs based on that relationship factor and that personal meaning. And, internally before that, part of the reason we decided to go that direction is we had a motto within the company that was, what we build best is relationships. So that's why, I made that decision of, let's focus on the people. Let's, focus on our employees and how they build relationships, and focus on, obviously we couldn't focus directly on the individual customers, but we could focus on customers in the broad sense of the term and focus on how we work with them to make a project successful. Just the way that turned out was really great.
That's cool. Nice. We're going to take kind of a hard right turn here, but
Sure.
I try to keep these around 30 minutes, and I want to ask 2 questions.
Yeah.
That have to do with parenting.
Yes.
And they're 2 sides of the same coin, which is, what's your biggest parenting success that you would consider, and what's one of your biggest either failures or regrets in parenting?
Aside from keeping them alive for 15 years, I think that the biggest parenting success is still ongoing. It's, we recognized fairly early on that our kids had some challenges, and we fought and advocated for them. Even when, my kids were born at just shy of 27 weeks, or 28 weeks. Sorry. It was 27 weeks, 6 days. So they were born very premature and very small. So we had to do a lot of early development stuff and go see a lot of specialists and stuff as they were maturing. They spent a lot of time in the NICU and things like that. And, when they were like 1 and 2 and stuff like that, we would still have to go for these check-ins. And when they got to be about 2.5, we started noticing some delays. My son will just kind of stop talking. You can't shut him up now, but he had some verbal delays and stuff like that. And the doctors kind of like brushed us off, and we were like, no, something's not like right. And because he would get this vacant look in his eyes, like he had detached. And we're like, yeah, he's going somewhere else, and he's having issues. And we noticed Andy as well was starting to have some developmental delays as well. So we fought for that, and we continue to fight for that. So I think, standing up for our children, advocating for them, and now we've taught them to advocate for themselves. And I think that is the biggest thing, is getting them to advocate for themselves. Yeah.
And what about the struggle, biggest struggle or failure?
I could take the cop out and say, the reverse of the same thing, which I think as any parent would do. Like I see the struggles that we have with that, and I certainly wish there was more that I could do. But I wish we didn't have to homeschool them, because I do feel like there's a lot that they miss out on by being homeschooled, that we're not able to provide them. Ultimately, I think it's the best decision we made for them. but there's, they miss out on the social aspect of school and stuff like that. Thankfully, we're parts of support groups and other things that do provide that, but not necessarily to the level of things. And I wish we hadn't just gotten so tired and beaten down by the system
Yeah.
that we felt like we ultimately had to make that decision.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's where I feel like our biggest failure is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for being so open and honest
Yeah.
and sharing about parenting and your design work. If folks are looking for you online, where's the best place to find you?
Instagram and Threads at jfrostholm, and that's pretend like it's two words. It's Frostholm. Yeah, that's the easiest place to find me on social media. And then I've got two websites. One is jasonfrostholm.com. That's my website that I use for teaching, and it's got my like grad school portfolio slowly making its way up there. And then our business is ildisdesign.com. That's ILDIS design.com.
Nice. Well, once again, thank you. And this was a
Thank
good
you, Michael. I
conversation.
really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one.
You too.